The hollow Fong sat in low orbit above a dead world, its neon flickering against the void. The kind of place where mercenaries lost fingers in poker, and slavers drank away their last regrets. It wasn't clean, wasn't loud, just quiet enough to hear the lies. In the far corner stood the bartender, a man no one ever called by name. Human. Old. Silent. He wiped glasses that never looked dirty, and listened harder than anyone noticed. 3 Kravari guards stumbled through the hatch. Standard uniforms, dented armor, half-sober grins twisted with cruelty. They reeked of conquest. The lead one barked a laugh, elbowed the others, and pointed a clawed hand toward the bar. "Look at this fossil. They still let humans serve drinks out here?" They moved with careless authority, the kind that came from believing yourself untouchable. The second guard slapped coins onto the counter, watching them slide toward the human. "Pour us something strong, earth blood. Make yourself useful for once in your life." The bartender said nothing. Glass in hand, bottle uncorked, drink poured, each movement smooth, practiced, mechanical. He didn't look up. That made them bolder. "You deaf, old man?" the third jeered. "Or did Earth's last war fry your tiny brain?" They laughed, loud and guttural. The Kravari were war-born, bred for domination, taught to hate humans since childhood. Earth's defiance during the Outer Rim rebellions hadn't been forgotten. Its silence since then unnerved them. The bartender didn't blink. The lead guard snatched his drink and threw it back, then slammed the glass down hard. Another. This time with respect. Still nothing. The second leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "You've got that look. That I've seen things stare. What was it, old man? Lost your world? Lost your war? Or just too slow to matter anymore?" A shadow shifted in the back of the bar. One of the older patrons, a lizard-skinned trader, quietly picked up his drink and moved to another table. "Sit down," someone whispered. "He doesn't like noise." The guards ignored it. One reached across the counter, grabbed the bartender's collar, and tugged. "You understand us now, hm?" The bartender's head tilted slightly. His eyes met the guards for the first time. No anger. No fear. Just something deeper. Ancient. Tired. The grip loosened. The guard hesitated but covered it with a laugh. "Still got a spark in you. Cute." The third guard swept his arm across the counter, knocking bottles to the floor. Glass shattered. Liquid splattered across the bartender's apron. He didn't flinch. The lead one grabbed another bottle, opened it with his teeth, and pretended to toast. "To extinct species!" A quiet click echoed. The second guard froze, eyes locked on the bartender's hand, resting near the counter's edge, just beside a small panel blinking red. "No weapons," the bartender said. First words. Voice gravel-coated steel. The room fell silent. The kind of silence that draws blood before the scream. The Kravari hesitated. The second one growled. "You threatening us?" A laugh came from a nearby booth. Not mocking. Nervous. "You don't know who that is, do you?" The trader from earlier leaned forward. "That man once walked through a Kravari blockade. Alone. Came back with a star general's head in a bag." The guards scoffed. "Fairy tales. Humans can't do that. You're standing in the last place that believes otherwise," the trader said quietly. "You're standing in front of a myth." The bartender refilled the shattered drink. Slowly. Carefully. Placed it before the lead guard. He didn't blink. One of the guards muttered. "They said revenants never age." "He's dead," said another. "Maybe," someone whispered. "But the thing wearing his skin isn't." The bartender turned, walked to the other end of the bar, picked up a clean glass, and resumed his silent cleaning. The Kravari looked at each other. Then at him. He hadn't moved fast. Hadn't lifted a weapon. Hadn't made a threat. But their instincts, trained and sharpened on battlefields, were screaming. The lead one forced a laugh. "It's just a bartender." But his hand didn't touch the second drink. The tension lingered long after the laughter died. No one looked at the bartender directly. Most had already seen too much. A courier at the far end, young and wide-eyed, leaned toward the lizard-skinned trader. "Is it true?" he whispered. "Was he one of them?" The trader didn't nod. He didn't need to. They called them revenants. Ghosts that bled like men, killed like gods. The courier hesitated. "I thought they were extinct." "So did the ones they buried," the trader muttered, voice dry as dust. "But some things don't die. They just wait." Another patron, an insected smuggler missing half his limbs, chimed in without turning his head. "Back on Elgrin 9, I saw a squad get torn apart. Clean kills. Precise. Not a drop of blood spilled wrong. The only footage recovered showed one human walking away. No ID. No insignia. Just a scar over the throat." The trader pointed subtly at the bartender's neck. The courier's voice dropped lower. "But the wars were centuries ago. Earth fought its last war alone," the trader said. "Refused backup. Refused surrender. The Galactic Alliance didn't understand why. Thought they were arrogant. Truth is, they didn't want help. They didn't want witnesses." Another voice joined in, slow, gravelly, filtered through a rebreather. "I served in the Zarkali incursion. Heard the stories. The humans turned their planet into a weapon. Took out whole fleets from orbit. No AI, no nanoclouds, just sheer will and fire." The courier blinked. "That's not possible." "You're young," the smuggler said. "You think fear is a strategy. They used it like fuel." The bartender wiped another glass. The movement was steady, unhurried. His face revealed nothing, but his presence pressed down like gravity. One of the Kavari guards shifted, eyes darting. "They're trying to scare us." The trader laughed softly. "He doesn't need help for that." Another patron told a different tale. No names, no planet listed. Just a whisper of a station silenced in 3 minutes. No breach alarms. No survivors. Footage later analyzed showed a single figure in the halls. Human. Unarmed. "He didn't shoot," the patron said. "He just moved." The courier looked back at the bartender. "But why work here?" the rebreather-wearing soldier replied. "You don't stop being a weapon. You just stop being used." Silence again. It wasn't the usual bar quiet, filled with clinks and murmurs. It was suffocating. The second Kravari stood abruptly. "Enough ghost stories." The lead nodded. "He's just an old man with a good stare." The trader's voice hardened. "A revenant wasn't built to age. They were grown to endure. They were buried alive, brought back, and told to hold the line until death or silence. Some chose both." The courier swallowed. "What happened to Earth?" No answer came immediately. Eventually, the insected smuggler answered. "Nothing. And that's what scares people most. It disappeared. Cut transmissions. Shut gates. No one's seen it in over 80 cycles." The bartender paused, eyes flicking to a small device under the counter, then resumed polishing. "They say there are sleepers," the smuggler continued. "Scattered across the galaxy. No orders. No purpose. Just waiting. If Earth ever calls again, they'll answer." The courier frowned. "And until then? They hide in plain sight. They learn. They watch. And when provoked," the smuggler gestured toward the bar, "you get stories like these." The Kravari guards stayed still, no longer mocking. The earlier arrogance had cracked. Their voices stayed low, their drinks untouched. The bartender adjusted a bottle on the shelf. It wasn't much. But the motion drew every eye. The lead Kravari exhaled slowly. "You people always worship fear." "No," said the trader. "We survived it." The courier's voice trembled. "If he really is one of them, why hasn't he killed you yet?" The smuggler answered with a whisper. "Because they don't start fights. They finish them." The Kravari didn't leave. If anything, the tension made them bolder. One of them, scarred, heavier built, grabbed the waitress by the wrist as she passed. Her tray clattered to the floor. She winced but didn't cry out. The bartender's eyes flicked in her direction. His hand paused mid-wipe. Then resumed. The lead guard leaned back in his seat, laughing. You let your women serve while you polish glass? How noble! The girl tried to pull free. The grip tightened. Her breathing hitched. The bartender placed the glass down. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped from behind the bar. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just present. The Kravari didn't move. He stopped beside the waitress. His voice was flat. Let go. The scarred one grinned, baring serrated teeth. Or what? There was no warning. No build-up. 1 second the Kravari held the girl. The next, his hand was twisted at an angle bones weren't meant to bend. He screamed. The bar didn't react. They watched, silent, expectant. The bartender let the arm drop. The Kravari stumbled back, clutching it, eyes wide. His fingers wouldn't close anymore. The lead snarled, drew his sidearm, and aimed. The barrel hovered between the bartender's eyes. The second guard followed. 2 barrels. 1 calm man. The bartender looked at the lead, then the second. He didn't blink. You've had your drink. You should leave. The second Kravari hissed. You think we fear you? From a booth came a low voice. You should. One of the older patrons stood, moved to the exit. Didn't look back. The lead Kravari's finger tightened on the trigger. The bartender moved. He didn't touch the weapon. Didn't deflect the aim. Instead, he stepped forward just enough to be inside the guard's reach. His hand closed around the weapon's barrel. The guard tried to pull away. The metal groaned under pressure. The grip cracked. The gun bent inward. It was over before it began. The second guard swung. The bartender caught the wrist mid-strike, rotated, and dropped him flat to the ground. Disarmed, gasping, weapons sliding across the floor. No wasted effort. No cruelty. Only control. The lead stumbled back, unsure now. His confidence evaporated. The bartender said nothing. A screen on the back wall flickered. For a fraction of a second, a symbol appeared, a black skull encased in a red triangle. The room noticed. No one spoke of it. The insectoid smuggler stared, unmoving. That's not a bluff. The bent weapon fell to the floor with a thud. The bartender returned behind the counter. Picked up the towel. Poured another drink. The waitress hadn't moved. She stared at him like everyone else. The Kravari weren't used to silence. They breathed in fear but rarely exhaled it. Now it clung to them. The lead finally stepped forward. Forced a grin. You broke my weapon. That'll cost you. The bartender's tone didn't shift. You can't afford me. The second guard, still on the floor, reached for his calm. The bartender's gaze pinned him. He froze. The traitor in the corner muttered. You just triggered the wrong man. The calm on the bartender's wrist pulsed once. Faint light. No sound. Just a line of text, Ghost Protocol, on standby. He turned the calm off. The lead Kravari backed away. His mouth moved, but no words came. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Another patron, a retired bounty hunter, whispered. They trained revenants to suppress reflexes. Not because they were unstable, but because they were too fast. No one laughed now. No sarcasm. No drinks raised. Just breathing and silence. The bartender spoke once more. You leave now, or you don't leave. Nothing more needed to be said. The lead Kravari snapped. His pride couldn't survive the silence. He lunged, plasma dagger drawn, blade humming near the bartender's ribs. There was no reaction, until there was. The bartender sidestepped in one fluid motion. His hand met the attacker's wrist, rotated, and the dagger fell with a clatter. Before the guard could blink, his knee shattered backward from a kick delivered with surgical precision. He crumpled to the floor, screaming through clenched teeth. The room didn't flinch. They'd seen too much to be surprised now. The second guard tried to run. He made it 2 steps before the bartender moved again. No wasted speed, just overwhelming intent. A bottle from the counter flew, shattered across the back of the fleeing Kravari's head. He collapsed, dazed, trying to crawl. He didn't make it far. The third reached for a concealed blaster, fingers fumbling against the grip. A metal stir stick, flicked with thumb and forefinger, embedded itself in his eye. He staggered backward, shrieking, arms flailing before he collapsed, twitching. 3 bodies. 6 seconds. The bar remained still. The bartender crouched over the first attacker, the one with the ruined knee. He looked him in the eye. The Kravari tried to speak, but only gurgled breath escaped. The bartender didn't need to hear it. A calm hand reached into the guard's pocket and retrieved a command chip, military issue, high clearance. He placed it neatly on the counter. The remaining conscious guard tried to beg. He didn't get far. A sharp movement, elbow to throat, silenced him instantly. The bartender stood alone again. A patron near the back whispered, "That wasn't self-defense. That was containment." Someone else nodded. "He didn't fight. He neutralized." The insectoid smuggler muttered, "That's the difference. Soldiers fight. Revenants resolve." Blood pooled near the edge of the counter. The bartender didn't look at it. He reached under the bar, pulled out a worn cloth, and wiped the mess like he'd done it 1,000 times. His heart rate hadn't changed once. Someone approached the fallen Kravari. A scavenger. Foolish. Reaching for one of the discarded weapons. The bartender looked up. The scavenger froze. Raised his hands. Backed away. No words were needed. A transmission began to pulse across local comms. A short burst of static, followed by encryption that hadn't been seen in decades. Those who recognized it didn't admit it. The bartender shut it off with a flick of his wrist. The Kravari insignia from one of the uniforms was removed, folded, and placed beside the command chip. A silent message. Not a trophy, an announcement. The screen above the bar glitched again. The symbol returned. Skull. Triangle. One word beneath it. Active. No one asked what it meant. The girl the guard had grabbed earlier returned to cleaning the broken glass. Her hands trembled, but she didn't speak. The bartender helped her gather the shards. Quiet. Efficient. A faint whine of distant engines rumbled overhead, Kravari dropships on patrol. No one moved. If they stopped here, they'd ask questions. If they entered, they'd die. The bartender stared at the ceiling, then returned to his station. A voice from the corner asked, "You going to leave the bodies?" The bartender finally answered, "No." He walked to the door, triggered the lock, and opened it. Cold air hissed inside. He dragged each unconscious body, one by one, and laid them just beyond the threshold. Alive. Broken. Intact. He shut the door behind them. The lock engaged. He poured a drink for himself. Something dark. Not shaken, not stirred. Just filled. No one asked what it was. He drank slowly, eyes focused on nothing. The crowd didn't cheer. There was no applause. Just understanding. Some legends are born. Others are buried. This one had never stopped breathing. Word of what happened spread before the bodies were cold. By the next rotation, comms traffic on 3 outposts showed unusual silence whenever the holophone was mentioned. Those who had watched stayed quiet, and those who hadn't listened harder than ever. No reports were filed. No one claimed bounty or honor. The Kravari didn't retaliate. They didn't return. Pride only stretched so far before it snapped. And fear was heavier than vengeance. On the outer rim, pirate crews debated whether to continue docking there. Half of them stopped showing up. Others began leaving offerings by the door, rare ammunition, encrypted data drives, hand-forged blades. Payment not for drinks, but for tolerance. In the deeper circuits of black market networks, a name returned to circulation. Not the bartender's. His didn't exist in any system. Just the designation burned into restricted military archives. Revenant 9, that alone was enough to cause veteran mercenaries to reroute entire campaigns. The waitress never asked questions. she simply observed. After that night, she noticed subtle changes. Certain patrons now bowed their heads when ordering. Some brought others just to catch a glimpse of him. Yet he remained unchanged, still polishing, still watching, still silent. His routine never shifted. But something in the air had. The pressure of his presence became undeniable. Across the quadrant, Kravari officers updated behavioral protocols. Avoid provocation of unidentified human males with tactical scars and outdated military posture. It didn't mention names. That would make it real. A week later, a scavenger wandered into the bar, visibly armed, armor scratched from travel. He walked straight to the counter, placed a weathered earth insignia on the wood, and stepped back. No words. The bartender reached under the bar, brought out a metal case, and placed the symbol inside. The scavenger left without ordering. Behind the bar, beneath the spirits and antique weapons, sat a small, locked drawer. Inside it rested 3 items: a folded earth flag, a combat knife with the word "Remember" etched in its hilt, and a communication unit long thought obsolete. That device blinked once every cycle. No message. No change. Just a pulse, steady, silent, waiting. Some said humanity had vanished. Others believed they'd ascended, evolved beyond the war-hungry systems of the galaxy. But a growing number began to think differently. That Earth hadn't disappeared, it had hidden. Withdrawn from a galaxy that betrayed it, choosing exile over subjugation. In scattered places, stories emerged. A human mechanic on a mining station disarming pirates with nothing but a wrench. A woman with calloused hands lifting wreckage no exosuit could move. A teacher in a frontier school who spoke languages long considered dead, only ever under her breath. None of them confirmed. None of them denied. And always the same trait, unshakable calm. Like they weren't waiting for a war. Just the signal. The bartender watched every nightfall through the viewport. He never showed frustration. Never nostalgia. Just stillness, like someone stationed at the end of time. Then, one evening, the pulse on the comm device changed. A red light. Slow. Measured. A frequency too old for modern scanners flickered alive. He picked it up, stared at the blinking light, and placed it back without a word. No reaction. No alarm. Just a moment of quiet acknowledgement. That night, he wore gloves for the first time in cycles. He locked the drawer again. The next morning, a few patrons noticed something new on the back wall, a black triangle etched above the shelves. No explanation. No ceremony. Those who recognized it left without finishing their drinks. By then, the legend was no longer whispered. It was accepted. The bartender still didn't speak unless necessary. He served without haste. He cleaned with precision. But his eyes, once passive, now watched differently. Not with threat. Not with memory. With preparation. Earth had not called him yet. But it would. And when it did, there would be no speeches. No revenge. Just return.